I did want to ask everyone, very briefly, what is your forecast? What do you see happening in 3 years' time? What will open banking look like in 2023? And perhaps I'll go ahead and start, Mounir, and then I do want to hear everyone here. But what would be your forecast, Mounir?
So there's two things that I think will happen. This is my sort of humble opinion, which is not necessarily worth that of folks in the audience. The first one is that I think there will be a move towards commercial APIs or premium APIs, whatever we want to call them. And those are APIs that I think will bring the banks, will increase the appetite of banks to be on board. Things, as I mentioned, like transaction-based financing and access to instant loans. And then the other one is better authentication models. I think over time, just as the banks came around to being familiar with the concept of tokenized card payments, they will come around to the concept of tokenized bank accounts as a form of payment, and then that same long-lived token could be used for account information access as well. I think if we can get to that, my hope is we will get to that. You will see that the appetite to engage in open banking will be better and the adoption will be better.
Got it. Well, Carlos, what is what should I expect from my financial app in 3 years, or will it be a financial app? What's your forecast for open banking?
Thank you again, and again, if I don't get a chance, thank you to OBE and to all of the panelists. It's amazing to be speaking to all of you and debating this. I'm going to challenge all of you with one thing that we didn't mention, and again, I have to be the counterweight on all of this. Is we didn't talk about social inclusion and the unbanked, and that really bothers me. I think we all have a role to expand more. We only talked about corporates, we talked about people that we assume to be banked, but we haven't said anything about what we're going to do about the unbanked. And I think that that's a really important aspect. And if banks are looking, if banks, BigTechs, FinTechs, small tech, small institutions, neobanks, whatever, really want to look at the opportunity is to go after the unbanked. We're talking about millions and millions of people that really need social financial services. So I think that that is where the opportunity really lies. And I'd like to challenge everyone on this panel to really look at how we're going to do that in the next couple of years. So my forecast, looking at the advancements in Latin America, and I think Mounir said it correctly, this is what at least Open Vector we're aiming, is we're trying to create the right structures and pillars around the globe to ensure for open banking, open finance, open data. The true destination here and our passion is anywhere from Canada down to Chile, to Nigeria, to wherever we are, is to ensure that the right structures are in place so that we look at a ease of cross-border solutions. So someone like Josh and Mounir and all of your fantastic products can come along and just place them across the board, with ease. So what I think is going to happen is, again, is an open finance move into open data with true international based offerings.
Got it. Well, Joshua, what is your view? What does Revolut have in store, 3 years from now, and will there be greater financial inclusion as a result, or what's your forecast?
That's a great challenge put out by Carlos, and I must say, challenge accepted. And I do see, like I was just mentioning before we started off, as contactless payments, open banking it's not something that's going to be fixed overnight. It'll take some time, but I do see, at least from a product perspective, some apps building some fantastic products on top of open banking. Just one that we were talking about is, imagine you just link your bank account, we go through your transactions or whatever, and in Revolut, you can obviously buy crypto, you can buy stocks, you can save money in a pot with the savings interest. Imagine if we could tell you exactly how much you should put in each of them to get to a certain amount of money that you want to spend. And this is how much we think that you'll be able to sustainably save over the next year just by the click of a button and all these transactions. So I feel like we'll have apps build some fantastic services and products from folks who always vary about so many of these financial products, and on the flip side, I also think that it's such an opportunity for the incumbent banks to kind of upgrade their APIs, their legacy. And whenever someone asks me the questions like, what's in it for the big banks? Like innovation. Innovation is probably the most important thing to all of us, right? And such an opportunity for them to innovate and they can build up, products like we do now. So yeah, I love to see vision, to think of like big things, and I think I have big hopes for open banking a few years down the line.
Great. Well, and Hakan, what is your outlook for 2023? Where are we going to be?
2023. I mean, when you look back the last 3 years, when we talked about PSD2 and what it will all change, I think we are three years later. Things have changed, but I think we are still at the very, very, very beginning of open banking or open finance. I think in the next few years, we will see a next wave of regulations in different countries. I think that will come for sure. And I think these regulations will be mostly focusing on that, what Carlos and the other folks were talking about, open finance, where, certain application where more competition is coming in, sharing product information so that better comparison sites can evolve, customers can pick and choose different services, and then switch accounts, switch loans, switch mortgages, and open banking can help to do that. In the current open banking setup, it's not possible, but I think we see the first developments in the UK with open finance and in other jurisdictions. Brazil is already in the path of open finance. We don't name it as such. I think this is a clear development for the next few years. Another one is probably, we talked about PASP and frictionless, instant, invisible, and free. Yeah, but I think we will see first tangible applications or payment methods coming up that might be much more frictionless than we could expect, because we heard all the challenges, right, of SCA and the frictions, but I think that the regulators are also learning, especially in Europe, listening to the ecosystem that things can change. But I think there is some room for improvement here and there. But I think that regulation will be key, and some first payment applications we will see as well. On top of course, financial inclusion. I think, Carlos, I completely agree. I think countries like Pakistan, for example, that is not very obviously on the radar, is one of the countries that are also pushing for open banking, especially for financial inclusion. Financial inclusion here also means not only the unbanked, but also the underserved customers. For those customers who have a bank account, but don't have access to loans because they don't have a proper address or probably not enough information. And FinTechs can help to innovate there, right, in collaboration with banks. I think there will also much more coming up in the next few years.
Got it. Well, and Amit, your last before my co-host Helen, I think, also has some thoughts here. But what are Accenture's customers going to look like in 3 years? What's going to be new for them?
I think 3 years is maybe a very short time frame to comment on. But if I just stretch that thinking a bit, and say about what does open banking look in 2025. One of the things that all of us are expecting to happen is open banking graduates onto open finance, graduates onto open data. So, and the implications of that are, I think, boundaries between industries will blur. You won't be able to make out that this is a bank versus this is a big tech versus this is somebody else. What you will see in 5-6 years time, because of the plethora of APIs and data points available, is people who dominate. It's organizations who focus on that customer experience and provide the right journey, who will dominate and own the customer experience, and they will provide one-stop platforms in the ecosystem. And I think this will give rise to what I call as super apps in 5 years' time. We are already seeing evidence of rise of super apps in Asia. So if you go to Singapore, Thailand, you can see this. I don't know if you've gone to Singapore and used Grab. They do everything within Grab. You can do banking, you can do payments, you can do everything you want to, order food, order your cab. And I think we'll see more and more of that. And I expect, organizations like Apple and Google to step into that space, significantly. the last point which I'm expecting to see, and this is a slightly more near-term view, the initial wave has been all about APIs. There's been a huge noise in the market. Let's build the next API. There's been competition amongst organizations who can build a better API and all that. But I think that stage will pass on, and we'll realize that APIs will be hygiene, and the next battleground will be data. So the players who are strong on data, who know what to do with all of this open data which is coming out, will be the winners.
Got it.
If I could just squeeze in one word, John, I just want to emphatically agree with what Amit just said, and just give you a quick example. Again, if you look at, to me, they're the sort of earliest and best-in-class model, UPI in India. They moved from 427 million transactions in 2017 to well over 10 billion in 2019. And as of May this year, they did over 1 billion transactions for like 3 months in a row or so. And so when you have an interoperable environment, this is the sort of adoption that you can see, even if there's a slow start at the beginning.